Okay, all right, so I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda and what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start off with Ben. Ben's going to kick us off with the Sharedo company and roadmap update. For those of you that have attended before, you know that this is usually at the end, but Ben is going to be focusing a little bit more on the company today, which will lead nicely into my section. So we're going to kick off with Ben this time. Then it's going to be me talking about customer success managers and how the department's expanded and what we're going to be looking to do for our customers. Then we're going over to Andre, and he's going to be talking how to get the most out of Sharedo Help, because again, it's another area of the business that has really expanded over the last kind of 12 to 18 months. So Andre, we just want to make sure people are getting out of it what they can. Then Tony's going to be talking about the very exciting and much anticipated Form Builder 2. Then we're going to go over to Australia, where Andre's going to take us through. Now, we've titled this Sharedo Approach to Data Design. Ben suggested, helpfully, we change that to Igor Stuff. So Igor is going to take us through some stuff. And then the last section, I've left it on because I know that there are a lot of people on this call that were coming on thinking we were going to do clinical negligence. Unfortunately, Phil has been whipped off onto an aeroplane. So he's somewhere over the Atlantic at the moment. So we're going to be looking to follow up on this forum with that later and do a specific recording and send that out, just because we don't want anybody to miss out that was hoping to do that. Okay. All right, so let's kick it off and let's look over to you, Ben. Do you want to hit your share button?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa, and good morning, everyone. Right, let's see if PowerPoint's going to behave. What view of PowerPoint are you guys getting? The slide view or the normal?
One.
The correct one. Happy days. Right. Yeah, I've got quite a lot to cover. Hey. I'm not going to do any demos. I'm going to leave that to Tony, hopefully. But I'm going to give you a little bit of, first say a huge thanks, right? I like to think the company and the people are light-hearted, but that does not belie the amount of seriousness and respect we have for the investment you make in us and the trust that you put in us. So I'll just maybe start with a thanks. We do massively appreciate that investment and that trust. Hey, I'm going to look a little bit about company performance from your perspective and what it means for you, and then look at how basically we're spending your investment, right, to make our products and service better. Then I'm going to go into the investment we put into product roadmap, and I've got a lot to cover in 20 minutes. Teresa, have we got 20 minutes? Okay, right. So yeah, again, thank you. It is really appreciated, and we treat it with the utmost seriousness. Hey, over the last 4 years, that trust and investment has broadly enabled us to grow at 50% year on year. We probably could grow faster, but we don't want to. Right? We're in a very fortunate position that we're a profitable SaaS company. Majority owned by founders and employees, so we're masters of our own destiny, and 50% is a healthy amount of growth for us each year, and enables us to continue to invest, to do new stuff, but also take a very long-term view on product development, which a lot of companies are unable to do. We are sort of roughly 50 people. We'll probably be about 70 at the sort of middle of next year, I suspect. We're trying to cap that amount of people. I'll talk about that in a short while. The reason being is, I think one of our strengths, and I don't know if you guys agree, feel free to feedback in the chat window, hey, is that we're able to be super personable and in-person relationships with our clients, right? And as we scale, that gets harder, but we have that same culture with internally, like we all know each other. So one of our aims is to keep the number of people within Sharedo at a certain level. As I said, we've been profitable for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something like that, which is really good. We spend a disproportionate amount of your investment on research and development, and actually one of the main levers that enables us to do that is actually most of our new business comes from your referrals. So again, a massive thank you to all the people who take reference calls or refer us through their networks. That's really appreciated. And it's really appreciated because much as we love Sebastian, it means we only need Sebastian, right? We don't need Sebastian Mark 2, 3, 4, 5, although there is a Mark 2 and 3 as well. It means we can focus more on research and development. And as a company, we're very much R&D focused. So that's sort of top line figures. There's loads more, but I won't bore you to death with those. What we're going to spend some time is what do we spend that money on? Now, given that we don't spend a huge amount on sales and marketing, the sort of 4 major investment areas for us, and the bulk of it does go to product, is customer success, expert services, security, and then I'll go into products in a lot more detail. And then Teresa's going to spend a lot, and Andre are going to spend a lot more time on customer success, right? So customer success, what have we been doing? I mean, I guess, what I'd like to see is that our service desk is beyond excellent, but actually we're changing the conversations we're able to have with you around more about how do we enable you to become more successful, both from a capabilities perspective in terms of rolling out the platform, but also from a business outcome perspective. So what we've been investing in a lot over the last, I suppose, 18 months or so is more customer success managers. Teresa's going to talk a lot about that. A lot more tools for those customer success managers to help you be more successful, to help you accelerate your deployments. And again, I know Teresa's going to talk about that. Underpinning that is obviously all the good stuff that people do in the knowledge base, led by Andre, and Andre's going to speak about that. I'm going to pick on 2 things that we're going to be rolling out this year. We're bringing, I don't know if it's going to be exclusively lawyers, but we're bringing in basically people, senior account executives who are there as lawyers to talk to your lawyers. And I think that's going to be quite a step change in enabling people to take advantage of the platform. And finally, we're going to be rolling out a more structured learning and development program at some point this year, I'm guessing, Teresa? Yeah. Happy days, yeah. I'll leave that to you. I'm stealing Teresa's thunder, hey. Moving on to professional services, I mean, I guess one of the challenges we all face is availability of Sharedo resources in the market, right? We've been scaling our internal team to meet that demand, both in the UK and in Australia. Been investing a lot in accelerators to help the process of getting those into your different practice groups is a lot quicker. But looking to the future, and with our mind, we want to keep the core team a reasonable size, and companies change culture, or have to change culture around somewhere between 60 and 80 people, right? We're very much investing in partners at the moment. And certainly, I guess people in Australia are seeing that more and more with Mosmar and Moray, and we're rolling out that same process in the UK and indeed in other markets in the future. So that's not something we're doing lightly. We're not letting random people to become partners. It's very much a vetted process. We invest incredibly in that partnership relationship. And I guess, we fly in our consultants to assist with that. But that's very much how scalability will happen in the future. And hence, you'll see the rebranding of professional services more as expert services, probably at some point this year. Okay. Product. I'm going to talk in detail about the product roadmap. But yeah, what's been going on then? We've been investing in a lot of product managers. So broadly, a lot of the design for Sharedo was done by a relatively small number of people. That's not particularly scalable. So we brought in a number of product managers, and I think there'll be some more product managers. And I think they'll be looking after dedicated areas. So they're integrations, UX and apps, finance, core platform, data and AI are the 5 product streams we've got now. What that bandwidth will do, I think, is enable us to be more collaborative. I think certainly at times we could spend longer consulting across our client base, or more broadly. I think most features do, then tend to get run past at least 1 or 2 clients. But I want to see that broader collaboration and more input, because ultimately we're building the product for you guys, right? We think we've got some good ideas, but collectively we're going to have a lot better. Yeah. So anything you see in this deck or at any point, feel free to email myself or email Teresa and say, look, I'd really like to contribute to that, and we'd welcome that. And certainly quite a few of the features I'm talking about, people are contributing towards. Yeah. Plainly, in that investment in product, the team's growing. I think we've doubled the size of the quality team, and brought on a lot more engineering resource as well. And I guess picking up a couple more, three sort of strands that we always talk about. Evergreen. I mean, I guess a lot of the code is possibly coming up to being 8 years old, hey? And as with any piece of tech, you need to continually refreshing it. So I think it was probably about a year ago, start talking about Modular Assistant. That's all our mechanism to continually upgrade elements of the application. And I'm guessing about on a 2-yearly timescale. My God, I'm going to have to hurry up. I'm being too verbose. About a 2-yearly timescale, we refresh each bit of the application. So we need to keep it evergreen. We don't want it to stagnate. I'll talk about that in more detail. Velocity, come back to it. UX and simplification, we'll talk about that in a second. So I think the other major area of investment is around security. We're living in a world that is becoming increasingly less secure, in my opinion, and certainly we see a lot more security hacking attempts, I suppose, in many ways. We've invested a lot into that, we brought on a chief information security officer, a lot more investment in SecOps, internal and external security testing. And for me, that's all the super important stuff, right? We need to, you trust us with your data, and we need to be beyond excellent in this space. What pops out of that ultimately is probably more accreditations, but for me, that's a byproduct of the work we're doing in terms of security rather than anything else. I'll pause for breath for a second. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll just crack on into product roadmap and do whole of product roadmap for 2024 in 7 minutes, maybe. All good?
Yeah, nothing
cool.
In the chat.
All right, brilliant. I guess in summary, thanks very much. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the investment and the trust, and I guess this is where we're spending it. I'm going to do a little bit of version of 7.7, a little bit of version of 7.8, and then a little bit of future stuff. And none of the stuff is, all this future stuff is bits we're working on, right, rather than planned stuff. Lots of new people, so apologies for those who've heard this before. We plan roughly to release a new version every 3 months. It's within that we do various point releases, usually every sort of 3 to 5 weeks, with sort of critical patches and all that sort of stuff. We do work at quite a fast velocity, and it is increasing. So we do roughly 1 feature enhancement per working day. And we've constantly got a backlog, hey, because everyone's got lots of ideas, and that's brilliant. So we always try to get to them in a timely fashion, but and every now and again people escalate it, and that's good, right? Or remind us that this is super important, because we are trying to balance demand across a reasonable number of clients at the moment. Our release strategy is always value and quality driven, not time driven. What does that mean? It means if a feature was in 7.7 but we don't think it's good quality, we'll slip it, right? If we have got loads of value that's ready to be delivered, we might pull things forward. Yeah, so we are not driven by time. We roughly want to stick to 3 months, and certainly we saw that in the release of 7.6, which was a very big release that took us a while to get out. Yeah, hopefully we're going to get back to normal about sort of 3 months. Yeah, 7.7. I think maybe middle of May we'll be releasing that. The graph on the left shows what's sort of roughly outstanding, which is still a fair amount of QA work to be done. There's always new defects that pop into that, but we're broadly there or thereabouts and stabilizing 7.7. Quick run through of the roll call of what's in there. A load of UX stuff. So changes to action plans, checklists, whatever you call them. A little bit of usability stuff there. Minor feature enhancements to list views. I'll come back to that in a second. Users can favor their own template, a new modeler homepage, access to the modeler audit, which is currently only available in import export. If you see that little history icon, that's now available across the application. That's super important because some of our development environments, some of our large clients have got a lot of people on them, and it basically gives you a roll call of who's doing what, so you can keep an eye on that. A bunch of chronology enhancements. You can now rename chronology items, which is super important when you're trying to remember what that random email that's always remain the same in a large complex chronology. We are releasing the Outlook plugin. It looks super good. I'm quite excited about it. It will definitely be in a beta stage. We'll roll it out slowly, so maybe give it to a quorum of users initially, but that's taken a reasonable amount of time. We're quite proud of that stuff. We are finally releasing the new business rules engine. I've been talking about that, I suspect, for over 6 months. And it necessitated us building this assistant feature to migrate all of your old matching rules to this world. But I think we're there or thereabouts. Usual sort of workflow enhancements. There's a new reparent feature, which you often use, will use to reparent matters to different statements of work and all that sort of stuff. Bit more stuff around monitoring your reporting jobs. And I'll come back to finance in the sort of broader roadmap. Lots of finance stuff coming on. How am I doing? Not very well for time. 7.8. We're most of the way through development of 7.8 actually, or at least the major features. Massive enhancement to list views. I'm going to show a picture of that in my next slide. Some stuff around better ODS journeys. I have been prompted on that. And I appreciate those prompts, right? We're always doing visual refresh stuff. There's a visual refresh coming in 7.7. There's another visual refresh coming in 7.8, and there will be little. We'll drip feed those visual refreshes rather than go, ta-da, it's the new Outlook that everyone presses the use new Outlook button and then promptly unpresses it because it's a bit scary, right? We'll do little bits. I don't know whether we'll be doing a preview of Form Builder, but certainly people will be looking at it. It will be available, I suspect, in its earliest forms, not in production, for people to start feeding back. So it's a preview rather than anything else. And the data upload feature, which is quite old. I don't know how old it is. That's been given a complete revamp. What does that mean? It means you can define your Excel templates, you can map them to a workflow, and you can take complete control of your loading of instructions, debt payments, whatever it might be. You can do all of that as configurators without any code, and a load of other finance stuff, which I'm going to talk about. Charts on the right, broadly, is just looking at the velocity over time. It is certainly increasing, and I think it will increase as we grow the team. Hey, and certainly we're super excited about the roadmap for the next 12 to 18 months. And if I'm honest, we're not that patient, right? We want to see it quicker, and I'm sure you guys would want to see it quicker. That's always balanced. That we always balance that velocity with quality. If you ever feel we're getting it wrong, then let us know. I think personally it's about the right balance. If we were more cautious, velocity would go down. We need to be able to move fast, in my opinion, and fix on fail. My recommendation is, if you're super brave, take a 7.7. If you want to be a bit more cautious, maybe take a 7.7.1. Yeah. Or even wait for a 7.7.2, and that applies to all of our releases, right? But if you don't feel we're getting the right balance, yeah, look, it's your investment, right? Tell me. It's all of these things are up for discussion. Hey, quick little visual. It's a massive UX enhancement. The new list view component. As modelers, you can provide multiple views. So rather than having lots of pages on your workbench, for example, you can have a single page with all these tab views across the top. as end users, you can save your filters. When you come back to the page, it doesn't lose them. It's a really nice feature. Hey, I'd like to think we maybe push that out in an early patch of 7.7. I don't know if we will or not, but it would be good if we did it, right? It's a lovely thing. Yeah, just another 7.7 feature, which is also highlights the new master detail control. For those who have matters with proceedings, is a good example, or insurance, it's maybe an incident with claims. It's a little bit clunky, right? It is a little bit clunky. This widget makes it super easy to configure it, but actually addresses a lot of those UX clunkinesses around dealing with cases, sub-cases fundamentally. So I think I'm calling out a few features as we go through this journey. I'm over time. Sorry, Teresa. Yeah, I've spoken about that. It's cool. I'll be super fast on future stuff. Broadly, working across 5 data streams. I'm not going to have any time to this. I hate these diagrams. I'm going to praise it very quickly. Our current data architecture is about 8 years old, and we are completely re-engineering it all to address a number of advanced use cases. Step 1 is near real time of reporting data. At the moment, there's about 15 in some client tenants, about 15-minute lag. Some of them might be an hour or 2, right? Everyone expects data to be real time in their reporting. So near real time, subset, well, maybe a couple of seconds, right? Type stuff. It's all being re-architected around Fabric, but you guys don't need to know about that. Step 2. The Schedule star schema, I think it's incredible value added, right? But it's really hard for people to consume from the Power BI model, because you get things called participants, schedules, attributes. It's very, very generic, and it has to be, right? So step 2 is the ability to design your own custom mini warehouses. Data lakes, as they're called now, but it's giving you the tools to create more friendly schemas. What does that mean? It means, well, actually, the tacit knowledge required to build reports against that is a lot easier. For advanced customers, you can take our data that's sitting in our instance of Fabric, and you can real-time put it in your environment by mounting those tables. So for people who are building, and they tend to be the larger clients, right? If you've got your own data warehouse, again, you're getting very low data latency data instantly available in your environment. It's one of our mantras is it's your data, and hey, you should have really quick access to it, right? Obviously got the APIs and all that sort of stuff, but sometimes you want the raw data for reporting purposes, yeah, or analysis purposes. We are then building a ML designer, which takes those data extracts, those custom data extracts, and enables you to train models on there. You won't need data scientists to do that. That data then gets surfaced up via Data Composer. Indeed, it actually gets Data Composer expressions. We're 99% certain will get surfaced up in your reporting model. Wouldn't that be cool? Create a Data Composer expression, doing a calculated field. You don't have to recreate that in Power BI. It will be there. Yeah, so broadly, all your machine learning, yeah, what's the predictive reserve for this case? What do I think the likelihood of reaching the litigation phase will be serviced in data model? And then there's going to be a few UX widgets. This stuff we're broadly I don't know if you can see my pointer or not. We're broadly still working in this bit. I'm like to think we may be giving previews sort of August, September of some elements of this. This is a long-term, large piece of research and development. Sorry, Teresa, I'm overrunning. Finance V3, loads of stuff. Broadly, we want you're still going to be plugging into a back-end finance system, but we want you to be able to do everything finance related from Schedule. Loads of stuff, investment times, bills, fees, write-off, and client and office accounting. Whizzing through that, I'm going to whiz through integrations. Broadly, we are revisiting a lot of integrations. We are working through building up the right ecosystem. I think the first few of those are with integrating with Leggle, data failure uploads, MCOL, doing some AI dictation-y type stuff, loads of stuff there. I'll skip on that. Product roadmap, always a massive, product accelerators, always a massive area I'm whizzing through. finally, in the UX and app streams, we started work on the Teams add-in. That's next after Outlook, and then we'll be moving on to a new version of the Word add-in focused on content authors as opposed to template configurators, but loads of other stuff, right? I'm whizzing. Pause for breath. Finally, obviously not going to steal Tony's thunder, but Form Builder version 2 is as big a change to the platform as Data Composer was when it came up. It's going to be ubiquitous and require a lot of effort to get that. Lee, I had forgot to mention that. Yeah, that's my next bit to spec, DMS integration. Cool. I've spoken too quickly. I often do that. Lots of good stuff. If I was to pick up on a couple of points from my 26 minutes, again, sorry, Teresa, thank you. We take the trust and the investment you place in us very seriously. We think we're spending it very wisely, but it is your investment. We provide a service to you. If you go, look, I want more customer success or more this, or actually I need this in the product, or hey, I've got some super good ideas in the areas you've spoken about, I'd like to think we're already approachable. Drop me a line, drop Teresa a line, drop any of your CSMs a line, or any of the consultants that work on your project, right? We'd love to have your input on our service as a company and the product that we offer you. All good? Thank you.
Well done. Well done, Ben.
I'm not getting the usual sort of PETA type comments or other things today. It's good. Hand up. Thanks, Mary. Thanks,
There's
Mary.
an hour and a half to go. I'm sure petrol coal coming out the wings.
I didn't mean to put my hand up, Ben. I don't have a question, but all good.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, Mary. All right. All good. I'll hand over to whoever is next.
Me. Okay. All right. Fine. Let me get my screen sorted. Let me share. Okay. So hopefully you can see customer success now on the screen. Hopefully I'm sharing the right slide deck.
Yep.
Fabulous. Okay. So I'm going to be talking now. Oh, actually, I need to set my starter timer because, like Ben, I like a good chat. So I'm going to try and get through it as quickly as I can. So I am going to be talking about customer success and the types of things that we're trying to do in customer success, and really our goals and how we're putting that out to you guys and what you can get out of it. So hopefully you're all experiencing some of these things, if not all. And as the team grows, as Ben just said, we are expanding the team. I do have an extra 2 customer success managers who are hopefully on the call today. So you'll be getting emails and increased communications from your dedicated customer success managers as we move through the next few months and embed it in. Okay, so customer success. So what I've done is I haven't gone in for a dry approach. I'm not going to give you a big model, but I am going to talk about a few things. So I thought I'd start with a few quotes. So a product should enable users to feel smart, capable, and not overwhelmed and frustrated. So obviously the product is at the center of everything we do. What we're trying to do as customer success is work around the periphery of that and embed all of the knowledge that you're going to learn about the product, and really make sure as we move through this slide deck, you'll see the types of things we're going to be talking about, such as adoption of the product and how we make that easier for you. Customer success is not about support. It's not about being reactive. It's about being proactive. Now, that's really quite a modern take on this because, previously the ethos was very much we do great customer service. And that's a lot more reactive. That's you guys telling us you have a problem and us resolving that. What customer success is striving to do is be a lot more proactive, a lot more of identifying what types of things are going to go wrong before you start identifying them. And the last one, you're not the hero, the customer makes their own success. I put that in primarily because I'm incensed by the fact that anybody could suggest I'm not a hero. But in all seriousness, it is actually, it is the truth. You make your own success. What we're here to do is give you the tools to make you successful. So what are our goals? So we have 6 main goals and 1 overarching goal. So number 1, we are a partner, not a supplier. That's quite important. We work with you guys, and we try to make that process as enjoyable as possible so that you want to engage with us. We do everything via insight. So, you know, we really try to learn your organisation and provide you with feedback and suggestions that we believe would help you and in turn help us. We know and listen to our customers. So we spend a lot of time with our customers in terms of we have across the customer success department, and that's not just customer success managers. We have lots of different meetings with you, and we're trying to reach as many people as possible within your organisation, because we want to learn about the challenges, not just being faced by possibly the IT team, but actually by the end users, by senior managers wanting to report out of the system. So we're really trying to listen to, you know, all of your concerns and feedback. We strive to provide a lean and successful implementation. Now that really, you know, a couple of buzzwords in there, but generally that's about us supplying the tools to make sure first the implementation is successful. I think that's a given, but also to make it as lean as possible so that, you know, as much as possible, we're trying to make it so that projects aren't elongated, they're not going on forever. And really, that's about putting the right people in touch on both sides of the fence. We empower our clients with knowledge and tools to be self-sufficient. So one of the key areas, and Ben did just mention it a second ago, is that idea of a Sharedo Academy. So for those of you that have been with us for a while, you'll know over the last couple of years, we've really pushed hard on the training. So we are suggesting training at every corner, and at every venture that we're doing, we are trying to push that training element. We're doing open training courses. I think we're now up to about 1 to 4 a month, where we believe that knowledge is power. And again, it goes back to that partnership in the fact that if you're trained, then that makes our lives easier. So, you know, it's really about giving you the tools to do your job, which help us to do our job, making you as self-sufficient as possible. We're a customer success organisation with a deep domain and product knowledge. So what that is that really everybody, even in our customer success department, yes, we are client focused. Yes, we talk at the personal level, but also Ben always says everybody in this company must know our product. And that's really important. So we spend as much time training internally as we do externally. And we spend a lot of time, you know, listening to things like the roadmaps and making sure everybody is up to date on what feature is around the next corner. Some people are going to know the product better than others. However, the point is everybody in this organisation, we are all about our product. And 11 minutes to go. We use data-driven insights to help our customers succeed. So we're really investing in that. That is really our next big thing. So I've been working quite heavily with those of you that know, and with Stuart around being able to pull metrics out of your system and feed those back to you. So, you know, how many matters are you creating? How many users are logging in? How many, you know, really make sure that you are using the system fully. And then as we move through that, you know, we obviously want to start looking at which parts of the system are you using most, which are you not using enough. So that is going to be our next big thing. And our overarching point is that we want to be loved by our customers. For us, it's not good enough that, you know, you're just happy, you like the product, you like Teresa at Sharedo because everybody likes me. We want to be loved by our customers, and that's us as a whole organisation. Okay, so customer success components. So I'm going to bring all of these up. So we're made up at the moment of about 5 facets. We've got support and service desk. Now, I'm pretty sure nearly everybody on the call has had some form of interaction with the service desk. We're using that not just for raising support tickets, but actually all the requests that you want, even down to things like just ask us a question. So everybody has their dedicated portal where you can go in. So that has been around quite a while now. Training services, as I've just mentioned, we are really invested in that, and Andre's going to talk a little bit about that in his next section as well. But the training services, we are not just carrying on what we're doing, which, you know, we are talking anything up to 60 free training sessions a year for everybody to attend, and then all the stuff that we're rolling out for client specifics. But going into that academy to let you be a bit more self-sufficient in your training as well. Help and knowledge content. I've got a note here, don't steal Andre's thunder. So I'll let Andre talk about help and knowledge content. But that, again, has been something for us that is about empowering you so that you don't have to ask us all the time. I would really encourage anybody that is going on to the help and knowledge to really be supplying the feedback that Andre is going to talk to you about in a minute. Developer operations. So this technically doesn't come directly within the customer success department. However, it is something that feeds massively into it. Putting you guys on the right, making sure you are maintaining an upgrade path is really important. Making sure that your infrastructure is stable, making sure that you are getting the environments that you need and that those environments are up when you need them and we're closing them down when you don't. So all of that developer operations is really important as part of customer success, particularly the more skilled you get, the more you want these kind of sandbox systems. And then dedicated customer success managers. So we've mentioned a couple of times now that we are expanding the team. So everybody's getting dedicated customer success managers. And for that is the softer side. That is more the getting in there and understanding and listening to you guys. Similarly, listening to our own team. So when we are in implementation phase, it's about listening to those. We're going to come back a little bit more to more things that your customer success manager will do. So customer success in your journey. So generally, where are you within your journey with ShareFix? So we have you when you're onboarding. Obviously, this is you guys. It's maybe a little bit pre-contract, but you're kind of there. So the types of things that we're doing is company introduction. So it's really getting, you know, there are a lot of prospects on this call today. It's bringing you into the fold. It's getting you to, you know, encouraging you to attend the events that are on our website, even the training events, so that you start to get an understanding of what we do. Understanding desired outcomes. So for the newer customer, you're getting your customer success manager a lot earlier, and that's so that we can start to understand those desired outcomes early on and really feed those in from day one. Sales enablement, as I said, quite a lot of this job is about making relationships on both sides of the fence and putting people in touch with one another. And so if there is anything that, you know, sales are wanting to show and we think benefits a particular person or a particular department, then we'll do that. Similarly, if we understand from your outcomes that actually we could do with showing you something very specific, it's feeding that back into the sales as well. So there's just a section as I'm moving along, there's a section at the bottom here, which is really just telling you outside of customer success, you know, who else are we pulling into this customer success journey? So there, you know, you're looking at the sales team there. Implementation. So this is, you know, the ink's dry on your contract and you're into implementation. So here, customer success is really starting to come in with a bit more force at this point. So again, those relationships, but it's about making more now. Now we're talking, you know, the project team and understanding from the customer side, what is that, you know, what is the desired outcome for that particular project team, and feeding that back into the project. Similarly, it's listening to project team this side. So it really is kind of, you know, that counterbalance between, you know, I don't say us and you because that's two sides and it's not, we're a partnership, but it's sitting above that whole partnership and just making sure the right people are connecting. And then we go into the big stuff. So this is really where customer success is starting to sit in the driving seat. And within that, obviously, we want to maintain those relationships because those relationships are hugely important in terms of making you guys feel comfortable enough to come to us and tell us what it is that you need and you want. And, you know, if we're failing, tell us we're failing. Support and service delivery. Obviously, that's the base layer of everything that we do. The customer success managers really get involved in that process because we want to, even at ticket level, do you know what I mean? We want to make sure that if we see that you're getting a huge influx of tickets, we'll want to understand why that is. And, you know, if you're aged ticket report is extending, for example, again, we just want to understand why and what we can do for you to kind of bring that down. And it may be that we'll feed it back into the technical team. As I mentioned, getting you on the upgrade path, which in turn will feed into end user adoption, because if we keep you on the upgrade path, we're investing a lot more time in that, because rather than just saying, there you go, you're upgraded, fabulous news, you're on 7.6.2. We actually want to say, okay, you're on 7.6.2 and here are all the features. So again, with a dedicated customer success manager, that's going to be something they're going to really actively start looking at with you guys and start demoing the features that you've now got, but you're not using. And that, you know, for some of the legacy customers that we've got on here today, that's going to be a real key thing for you, I think, as we move forward. I'm just going to have a little drink because I'm starting to get dry mouth. Proactive resolution management. So we're gonna look at a slide in a minute about what we're doing, what bigger events we're doing to really help you guys move through the challenges that you're having. And that's not using a fancy word for problem. It's challenges. Do you know what I mean? It's not a ticket. It's not an issue. It's just a challenge that you're having. And then when we move into expansion, so, you know, obviously we hope that all of our customers aren't just going to stay with us, but we're going to do more and more for them, whether that's more licenses or whether it's more using the product more broadly. So at that point, you know, yes, we may start to pull sales back in and really get you some demos on some, I don't know, an accelerator pack, or which I think Ben just mentioned is going to be renamed, but, you know, getting you a demo on an accelerator pack or a customer portal or or whatever it is that you want to use. But, you know, we'll pull in the right teams there. And one that I've missed off there is possibly a solution architect, because, you know, they obviously play quite a key role in helping you guys to understand how you can use more of the product. Okay, so this idea of proactive resolution, we're trying to do it on a bigger scale. So yes, we will still help you, as I mentioned, resolve any smaller issues you've got that are possibly coming through the support desk. But where we've got a challenge, you know, you've got, well, I mean, we did one of these just last week, and there were 3 key areas that we identified and thought, right, okay, this is one thing that is making users not use the system. You know what I mean? They may be keeping a separate Excel spreadsheet, or they're sending emails directly out of the system. And we worked with the customer to understand what are these 3 key areas. Now, a Kaizen event, it comes from a Japanese word and it's split into 2. So it's Kai and Zen. And Kai means change and Zen means for the better. So the idea of one of these events is that we identify these issues and we approach it from a rapid process. So, you know, you could call it rapid development, but we're not really developing anything. So the idea is that we come in at the start of the day, we do a lot of planning in the day leading up to it in terms of identifying the issue, breaking it out, how we're going to tackle it. Then we come in on the day, we listen in the morning to the end users. We spend some time in discovery and design. And so, you know, we might do that over a couple of hours. Then we'll move into actually configuring it. So, you know, we bring a few of our guys and we sit down and we actually configure it. We get it into the system there and then on that day. And then at the end of the day, we will start running tests and we're bringing the users back in again and presenting it to them and saying, right, you know, test it. Is this what you wanted it to do? Now, we did that over one day. There are other options. You know, we can run it over a couple of days or a week if it's something particularly challenging. But the point is, it's establishing and identifying issues that will then go on to, you know, really encourage adoption in the system. And the best thing about the Kaizen events is they're fun. You know, we have a lot of fun on site with you guys. I think last week we took little plants for everybody and, you know, a whole bunch of food. Consultation day. So this is something else that we're actually doing as well. So the consultation days, we're really that's my timer going. Consultation days, they are us coming again, but it's really about us just listening to the end users. Yes, whilst we're there on site, if there are quick wins, we definitely deploy them whilst we're there. But it's about us listening, because quite often what we find is we have, you guys have users that are feeding through a certain amount of stuff, but then actually there's a bunch of other stuff that they're just putting up with. And that's not what we want. Do you know what I mean? We want everybody to use the system, and we want everybody to be happy using the system. So yes, we can train them, but we also want to make sure the system at its base is doing everything that they want to do. So as I say, we can do quick wins. Quite often there's some stuff that we'll take away, we'll feed it back in through the project team, or we'll start bringing in the right resources our side. So configuration services, for example. Okay, so my last slide is, what does customer success as Share do? So I said at the start of this, I wasn't going to do something as dry as a model, because a model, customer success, is a much softer skill. It's not about, showing a big fancy graph. So what I've got 3 words for what I believe customer success is. So the first one is enablement. Everything that I've talked about over the last 17 minutes, Ben, I'm not overrunning, has been about us enabling you to do what you want to do, whether that's via training, or whether that's via any of the other services that we're supplying here under the umbrella of customer success. But the point is, it's making you able to do what you want. Similarly, internally here, it's enabling our teams to get from our customers what they need to do a lean implementation. Empathy. So a customer success manager for me really has to have empathy. It's not about sympathy. It's not about sitting there going, yeah, I understand, it's not that great. It's about us being able to put our own hats in your ring and go, yep, I totally understand. And internally, as I said, Ben has this thing that we all will use the product. And that's really important in really driving home that empathy, because if we can empathise with what your challenges are, we can resolve them quicker. And then the last one is driving. So customer success is about driving change. It's about driving the requirements of internally here and our customers as well. So it's really about driving those things that need to happen along the way, whether it's putting people in touch with one another, or whether it's actually, getting you guys to go on some training or something. But essentially, the final word there for me is thriving. So that's really what I've got to show you. I've obviously plugged sharedo.co.uk events, so the fact that everybody is on this call means that you've at least gone to the events page. But I would encourage you to just keep an eye on that, and if there is any training on there that you guys would think would benefit you, then please go on. Similarly, if it's not on there, please send me a message, and it will look to get it rolled into the next set. Okay, all right, that's me done. Okay, so we're moving over to Andre next. Andre, you ready?
We'll see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Right, so my name's Andre Pretorius. I live in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I run the knowledge base system at Sharedo. I'm going to give you a short tour of the knowledge base. Let me get my slides going. Here we go. And my notes, because that's useful. Right, so the aim of the knowledge base is to help you help yourself, to help you find the information you need quickly. And our knowledge base contains help materials for end users, authors, template authors, modelers, project managers, and system administrators. You can find the knowledge base at help.sharedo.co.uk. We currently have around 450 articles in various categories, including training and so on, in the knowledge base. It's a lot of information in there. Many demos are attached to articles as well, and there are, as Teresa has said, lots of training videos. I'll show you all that in a second as well. Next slide. Whenever you're ready. Okay, so what I'm going to show you in the demo of the knowledge base is quick links. Well, as you can see on the side there, quick links, search bar. There's a list of popular articles. There are subcategories that group topics together. As I said, the embedded videos, articles have things like table of contents to make it easy to navigate around. And then, of course, there's feedback sections. We'll get into that as well. I'm going to now go to the system and show you what I'm talking about. Right, there we go. So every page in the knowledge base has got a search bar with a filter. We'll get into that now. And quick link buttons to do various things. The main page is divided into search bar and then categories. These category cards list broadly topics that should be together, and many of them have got subcategories, not that one. Let's just go back to modeling. Subcategories that group like articles together that would fit underneath the main one. Article pages themselves, let's have a look at that. Article pages themselves show the search bar, like I said, and this is the table of contents, which is collapsible. So if you're on a smaller screen, for instance, and the table of contents is over your article, you just simply collapse it or so on. Some articles are very long, and this stretches all the way down through the article. This is quite a short one. Then at the bottom of each article, there are a list of related articles. This is automated generally. If there are specific things that relate to this article, then they would be in here. We are limited, unfortunately, only having 4, but most articles do have links inside them to other sections. For instance, if this were talking about matching rules, there'd be a link to the matching rules article, for instance. But let's talk about images. I'm going to just collapse that. So many images, because we often take screenshots of the entire Shedu workspace, they would be bigger than what the article can actually see. So you would get an idea of the image like so. If you click on it, it would expand, and you could get one-to-one view, for instance, move it around. You could even zoom in or go full screen. Others that you won't use like that. But anyways, you get the idea. Full screens and zooming in are the most important ones. Then let's have a look quickly at something we call accordions. So oopsie daisy. Often there are questions that might be asked relevant to the article in this type of format, and it's just a matter of clicking down to get the answer. Just so that we limit the amount of information that's bombarded at you by organizing things a bit better. So let's just get back to the home. Okay, then let's have a look at the glossary. There is a glossary of terms. Let's just go to that. This glossary is growing continuously. The way that the system works, I'm trying to maintain a level where you get the information you need, but not too much. We can't have every word in the glossary. That's just going to make chaos on topics. If you mouse over, if you mouse over a defined term, you would see the little pop-up of what that term is. In the glossary itself, which is growing, it's a relatively new part of the knowledge base. You could, for instance, just look for the words under the letters or just search for them specifically. Then, as has been mentioned, with every release, there are release notes. Just scroll down to that. The release notes, demonstrate. Let's actually go to a point release because it's what I will show you. Go back. Too far back. It's going to be 760. So in the release notes, we generally call out the most important features, new features that are involved. Which close it off. For instance, in 7.6, there was the upgrade system was new. There's a little write-up about it. If there are articles related to this particular feature, which the aim of the knowledge base by the end of this year, we hope every new feature should have an article. That's an aim. We're working towards it. But yeah, that's it. So in this case, for instance, the assistant new feature 7.6, you can get to the article by clicking the link. Simple. Right, that's that. Now let's talk about the search bar. Go back to the beginning. You've already seen me use it. It's a typical search. Every article has got keywords in it that are the typical terms that you would be searching for. Let's, for instance, use user. Spell user. Yeah. And that will bring up articles with user in it. The way that the searches are returned are by keyword first, then by heading one, and then by words inside the article. While we're here, let's have a look at the AI bot. The AI bot is also a new-ish feature that the platform that we build our knowledge base on has implemented. It is a growing and, like I said, very new feature of theirs, and it's still busy learning. It's not perfect. It does give you generally good suggestions if you don't know quite what you're searching for, but you know it's got something to do with users. For instance, you would get some questions you could ask. So let's just demonstrate that. I'll copy a question in and see, and then it brings up some information about that question. Like I said, it's not 100% accurate yet, and it is a work in progress, but at least it's something coming. Okay, just close them off. I'll check my notes and have a drink. Okay, the search bar itself demonstrated that there is also a filter type thing. You can filter by categories or subcategories in the filter box. So for instance, users, you might find articles relevant to users in the modeler guide, so maybe user management or so on, but they might also be in the developer's guide, which are two totally different topics. If you know that you're searching for users, something common, but it's only in the IDE or development guide or something, then you would just simply select the developer guide and it'll filter out everything else. So if we go into a category, the filter box would then show you anything inside that category. If you wanted to search everything, you would need to select search all. Okay, let me see that. Then let's have a look at the training videos. So there's a quick link to them. That quick link, which I'll show you now, opens up the Shedu Educational Sessions category. The Shedu Educational Sessions are all of training that happened over the last year currently, in order. So the oldest one would be at the bottom. We'll get to that in a second. In these articles, for instance, in this particular one, we've run 3 different overview or introductory training sessions. They would be listed as the most recent at the top. So yesterday, in fact, we did one. Nicola did one. The training session is indexed, so you can, say you were in the session and you remember someone was talking about the portal page per purpose section feature, then you know that it's at 24 minutes 57 seconds. You could watch the video either in the article itself, or you can open it up in YouTube. Let's just pause that again. In YouTube, it might be easier to jump to the sections using the links. Just standard. Okay, see that here. I can't. There's a. Okay. Training. Right. A very important thing for us is your feedback on articles and overall. So firstly, in an article, at the bottom of the article, you can, if the article was helpful or not helpful, we'd like to know. If it's not helpful, then I can improve it. So, or we can improve it. So we would like to have that feedback. But if there's more in-depth feedback that you want to give, for instance, let's just do that. Say there's missing info in the article that you know about, for instance, you could select that, give me details about what is missing, and then also let you know if we've changed something. I would encourage everybody to use the Notify Me and put their email address in, simply because then I can contact you for more details if I need more details, or maybe to answer a question, or possibly there's a different article that you're actually looking for that I could just help you immediately. So I would suggest using that. So that's that. And then the other type of feedback is this Contact Us page. The Contact Us page, come on, a bit slow today. Allows you enter your email and you enter a question. This is a request for information. So say there's a section of the product that you're using that you can't find exactly the information you need on it. You can then ask us a question or request an article on that particular thing, just by filling in, firstly, a brief description of your question, and then it is actually what you want to know. You'll obviously have to prove you're not a robot, and that gets sent to me as an email, and I will contact you, or I will write up the thing as needed. This is very important. It like Ben and Teresa have said, we're about a partnership. We're here to help you help yourself, and the two of us helping each other makes everything better. So I really encourage the use of feedback. Right, I really went through that quickly, but let me just make sure my notes. I think I've covered it all. So let's pop on to the thank you. As I said, there's 450 or so articles in the system. We cover so many different things. It's open to everybody, so you can browse through what you want, use the search bar, click around on the categories, and you can really get a feel for the system using the help. So thank you for listening. I hope this has helped you and will help you in the future.
Thank you, Andre. That was really good.
Just like to add one thing, actually, and I'm not sure we're allowed to do this, but internally, right, improving the knowledge base is super important for us. So our professional services team, when they see an article that's not quite right, they press the feedback button exactly the same way you can do it, and Andre and various other people seem to pick up that feedback super quickly, right? Now, internally, we have a monthly award, which is the best person to contribute to the knowledge base, and they get like an Amazon gift voucher. I see no reason, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I see no reason that if we get feedback from anyone in the community, we'd love to go, yeah, that's brilliant, thanks. And if you're the top feedbacker, obviously positive feedback is appreciated, but I don't see a reason why that should be an internal thing. That could be an external thing. I'm not sure we're allowed to do that, but yeah, feedback, super important. It gets action super quickly, and if you're top feedbacker, I see no reason why either charity donation, if we're allowed to do that, or Amazon gift voucher would be cool. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you, Andre. That was really good. Okay, I think we're over to Tony next. Tony, you're up. Hit your button.
Good day. You'll have to excuse me. I am full of some kind of virus, so I may break off into a coughing fit. So if I go silent, because I'm muting my microphone while I basically go and throw up in a corner. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Yes, you can. Right. So I'm going to take you through something that's coming later, towards the back end of this year. It'll probably be formally released. We'll get a preview out hopefully just after summer, and it's something that we've been It's been muchly anticipated for several years now. So we've always had a form builder, and it works, it does its job, but it's never been quite what we've wanted to build until now. So I'm going to try and show you what it is. It's a very early build, but before I do that, I just want to show you where we're coming from and where we're trying to get to. So at the moment, we've got 3 different kind of, not competing systems, but collaborating systems as ways to define custom data that you can attach to things like your work types, your participants, your ODS entities, and things like that, and the forms and how they get displayed to the user and how the actual capture works. So that's starting from the right hand side. It's the Forms Engine version 1, which is where we do the form definitions, which is where we create the fields that you want to capture against a particular form definition. And what you're describing at that point is kind of a reusable data component. So several fields with this particular layout of capture with these controls. And then you attach that type of data to typically a work type, an ODS entity, a participant, and the way that you attach those is this thing in the middle, which is the Aspects engine, and the Aspect engine can attach forms or other things. Now that's great, works, does its job, but it's a bit limited. So just going through some of the things that are limiting about this, what we're trying to get rid of and make better is, for a start off, we've got about 20, 30 input types, and that's about it. So you've got all the common things that you would expect. So you've got text inputs, you've got drop down lists, you've got checkboxes and all of that kind of stuff, and that's great. But in order to extend that form builder, it gets a little bit complicated. So if you had a form that captured maybe a risk value and an impact value, and you wanted another field that would show you a nice, I don't know, some kind of donut chart that multiplied the 2 numbers together and showed you this nice visual, you can do that through the IDE and build a custom component. But then attaching that to the work type, you've got to attach the form, and then the custom component, you've got to then hide the form. And it's all a bit, to make things that are beyond the standard, here's a bunch of fields, it's all a little bit cumbersome. The other downside with that is, because we're just defining basically key value pairs of things that we're going to attach to data, all of that data that's captured is pretty much untyped. So it's stored in untyped storage. So effectively it's treated as a string. Now, what that means is when that then moves across into the search index and you want to use it in list views and things like that, it's actually currently impossible to do things like define a date time field. And even though it works as a date time field through the UI, it's impossible to then filter that based upon a date range, because as far as the index is concerned, it's just a string, right? We've just captured a bunch of attribute value pairs. The other part of that is it's everything is indexed. So if you create form definitions against a work type, that you've got 40 custom fields, all 40 of those fields will go into the index. And what that means is every time you change those fields, it's going to re-index. So if you open up a work item, you change one of those form definition fields, whether you're interested in searching, sorting, filtering by it or not, it's going to update the index. And that's not particularly efficient, because there's only a handful of fields typically that you're going to want to be able to search on. We were about to bake into this the ability to start categorizing some of the data. So some of the fields that you might capture will contain personally identifiable information. And we want to be able to mark that to say this contains PII. So we can then run a report, we can basically do some more heavy GDPR compliance type stuff in terms of right to be forgotten and all of that kind of thing. And we had no real way of doing that. There's no, beyond the definition of the field, there's no way to describe the field in terms of additional metadata. So we also wanted a way to be able to do that and extend that further. And then in terms of layout, the layout that the form builder allows you to do at the moment is very much label input. There are a couple of ways of extending that, but really limited in terms of being able to do some custom ways of laying out your form, changing what the layout looks like and all of that kind of stuff. Also quite limited in terms of the UI paradigms you can use. So we all see these all the time. They open in the blade. There's a panel that's got your form in it. But what you might want to do is have your blade come in and it not have a ribbon, it just have a title bar, and you actually want to follow a wizard to fill in some stuff that you can keep coming back to all of that kind of stuff. Currently, that's impossible with Forms Engine 1. And then the last part is, as we then expose that stuff out into the work type hierarchy, in this instance, it could also be the ODS stuff or the participants API and all that kind of stuff. The API that we use to then create these things is not very, it doesn't self-describe very well. So in order to be able to create a work type of Matter RTA, you need to know what form builders you've got attached to it in order to know what aspect payload to pass in. The actual documentation within the Shodo API guide will not tell you what goes in there. It just says it's a JSON object and it's structured based upon whatever form definitions you've got attached. We wanted to move away from that. We want to have a proper self-describing API where you construct data, you construct types, you construct ODS entities, and it knows through introspection exactly what payload you need to pass, and it be a strongly typed payload as well. So that's enough about where we are. Let's have a look at where we're going. So, one more last thing as well. So you've got a UI on the right-hand side for actually defining the form. You've got a UI between the two boxes on the left, which is where you're then defining the aspects for the work type. So you've got two separate UIs for defining the user experience for capturing that data. So this is where we're going to. So all of those concerns we've just talked about actually boil down to the same thing, and that's types. So we've still got the work type definition stuff described on the left-hand side here. That could equally be ODS stuff. It can be participants, but all of the other stuff has been replaced by this hierarchical type system. And the idea there is everything, if you think about data, everything is built up from primitives, from scalar variable types. So you've got integers, strings, and all that kind of stuff. But a string isn't always a string. So sure, it's a string if I'm capturing somebody's name, but inside of Shodo, we also we use strings to describe pointers to things like configurations. So one example is a phase model. If you want to point to a particular phase in a phase model, you will use the system name of that phase system name. Now, that's still a string because it's just a string, but it's a very specific type of string. It's a system name string. But a system name string could be the system name of a work type. It could be the system name of a phase. So the concept of a hierarchical type system is we start with string. And then underneath that, we'll have something called system name. And then under this system name, we'll have something called a phase system name. These are all still strings. The root type is string. And so any control that we put on the UI that's capable of using string can bind to that type of data. But then if we have specific controls that we're exposing from the platform that says, this is about picking a phase, we can specify that the data type that control will allow binding to is a /string /system name /phase system name, and then we can provide custom UI for filling in any field of that given type, if that makes sense. So these types are hierarchical. They're fully typed. We're also then able to construct complex types from the types that we've defined. So we've got our primitives to start off with, and we've got different types of those primitives. We can then say I'm going to create a custom type. So let's say I want to have a standard format for an address. So I can go in and I can create an address that's got 5 fields in it, town, city, whatever, of type some other entity type. This is going to be string, of course. And now I've got a type that I can attach to something else. I can use that as an actual field type in something else. So we've got this hierarchical type system that allows us to compose the data in different ways. Then sat on top of that, we wanted to have a nice no-code visual designer. We want to be able to provide multiple views as well. So creating a work type for a matter, for example, you might have multiple different views. You can't do this at the moment, not without creating lots of display rules around persona and all that kind of stuff, and it's not going to be that flexible. The ability to have multiple views is something that we needed to bake into there, and we wanted to also still provide, whilst we're providing this no-code visual designer that will get us 90% of the way on it, 90% of the way there on even the most complex use cases. We also want to be able to go into code in the background as necessary to provide customizations. Now you can think about this a little bit more like, if anybody remembers it, Visual Basic from the 90s, where you could design your forms and it all was good. You could set your bindings and stuff, but if you needed to have some custom behavior for how that form worked, you could press F11 and go into the code behind and start showing and hiding things and doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things. Now, with this hierarchical type system, we can then drive a public API that's properly self-describing, that's going to tell you exactly what payload you need to post in there. And this is effectively ripping out everything to do with Form Builder 1, everything to do with aspects. But the little blue thing that's on that slide there is, because we've got a lot of aspects out there in the wild, we're going to try, as part of this, migrating everything across into the new world. But there will be some clients that have got custom aspects that they've developed as part of their plugin solution. So we will also have a legacy aspect adapter that we can put into this world that allows us to use the old model, and that will just continue to still work. Anyway, I'm probably running over on time, so
no, Tony, you're actually fine, but there is just a question that I don't think I'm empowered to answer. Will the updated public API have the ability to look up, as an example, phases associated with a specific work type? There are many times at the moment where you can't reliably look things up.
I would say that's a slightly different concern than the actual creation, updating of individual work items. But in terms of looking that data up, there should be APIs that allow you to look that up. If there are not, that's a gap in our public API, and we can add that. But there are APIs you can use, even if they're not documented in the public API. So it's probably just one to reach out to Teresa and the gang.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm going to show you is a really early build. It's literally built on my PC this morning, so it could go horrendously wrong at this point. I did give it a brief check before we started, and it seems to be working, so fingers crossed this goes okay. But you're going to see a load of stuff in here that's not even remotely polished. You're going to see labels with to do here, this, that, and the other all over the show. We're literally a few months away from having any kind of preview of this in practice. So let's switch over to this and let's see what it looks like. Right, so it's going to be, as everything, here you open the modeler. And in the modeler, we've got forms and views, and at the moment, you'll see we've got form builder definitions, which is the old stuff. I'm not going to show you that. And forms and data is the new thing that we've got, and I've got nothing in there. So I've got no data definitions. So when I'm in this mode and I'm in the global modeler, I'm defining data that can be reused in other places. So I'm defining complex types. I'm defining effectively custom entities that I want to attach to something else. So let's have a quick look. So we hit the new button to define a new entity type, and we get this UI. I'll talk about what the UI is doing as we go through it rather than trying to tour around it at the moment, because it changes depending upon what context we're in. But the first part is I create a new thing and I've got to give my entity a name. So this, I'm going to use the scenario of capturing an address. So obviously we capture addresses against participants, so this is a little bit invalid, but you get the idea, just bear with me. So we're going to capture an address. We're going to call it an address, give it some kind of description, and then we're going to define the data structure. Now, what I'm showing you here, a lot of this is going to change before it actually gets to release. It's quite simple and straightforward at the moment in the fact that I've got a display name for the field, a field name and a variable type, and then I've got the properties of the field down the right-hand side. We're actually extending this to be not more complicated in terms of UX, but in terms of what you can capture against it. So this will change in some way, but we'll still try and keep the ethos of it being simple and straightforward. So I'll have maybe the street address, which is going to give me a typed field name. So it's got to be a valid identifier, which it does automatically for you. And then I've got this variable type. Now the variable type, unlike when you're defining a database, you've got just the scalar types. In here, we've got the scalar types and any derived types. So I can say that this is going to be a string, obviously, which is the thing that I want in this case. But I could also say it's actually a system name and it's for a phase system name. Now, what that would do is when I come to design my UI, the things that combined to that particular field will only be controls that explicitly say that they handle the variable type phase system name. So they'll have some kind of intelligence baked into them to understand what phases are. So in order to be able to pick the phase system name, it will do some custom logic, whatever the control needs to do to allow you to choose it. But for this, I just want that to be a string, so I'm going to make it up from a scalar. And then let's give it, I don't know, town is another one, which can also be a string. And we'll have, what else would we have? County, that'll do, also a string. So I've defined my data type. It's simple as that. I've now got something that I can attach to something else. Some other things just to point out on here whilst I'm here is, as I'm building up the data structure, the actual data structure is building up on the left hand side as well, and this will come into, you'll see the purpose of this in a second. What it says to do, there's some other stuff coming in here. So in addition to be able to define the data structure that I want to use against this entity, you're also going to be able to say, but do you know what, a bit like workflow, I want to go and load some more data about the thing that I'm editing or the type that I'm editing, and go and pull in that data from Data Composer. So you'll be able to create Data Composer lookups here to basically say, go for this work item, maybe what I'm attached to, go and load all the details about the client. And those fields you can also then start using on the UI, which we'll see in a second, to start binding those to controls as well in a read-only fashion. So you can pull all kinds of data in onto your forms, not just those 3 fields that we're defining the data structure for. So as I go down, so that's my data structure, and that's all I actually need to do if I want to. If all I want to do is define some data, that's it, I'm done. I hit save. That becomes an entity that I can use in different places. But I want to say there's some standard ways that I want to view this entity. And for that, we can add views. And views are given a name, and they've got a visual designer, and you can have multiple. So I just want to call that out to start off with. You can have as many different views as you want against your entity. So I've got 3 views there now. I can design those however I see fit. Start off with the default view, and we've got some properties at the moment on the left hand side about what the view is. So my context has now changed. So in the designer, the properties is the thing that's currently selected, or if there's nothing selected, it assumes that the view is selected. So these are all properties to do with the view. And if I just quickly, I'll come back to what this is doing in a second. If I just quickly drop a control in there, a label, and select it, you'll see that the actual properties change. A bit like workflow, you select the thing on the canvas, it updates the properties panel on the right hand side. And each of the different controls or the thing that you've got selected will have a different context of things that you can do. From the data tab though, this is the data that I've defined against this entity, and I've got my body zone here, and I've got some properties over here. I can now start just dragging in these fields. So I can say, okay, I'm going to start with the street address, and then I'm going to have the town, and then I'm going to have the county. Now, what that's done is, all that actually was because it understands what the data is, it's just a shortcut to using the toolbox. So the toolbox are the controls that you can add to a view based upon the context that you're currently in. What I mean by that is, this is also not just replacing the form builder stuff, it's replacing the aspect editor stuff that you find against things like work types. So in that context, you're going to have things like the ribbon, the work item ribbon, that gives you all the phase changes and all the actions you can do. That doesn't make sense when it's just in a form, because I'm not necessarily editing a form. So that editing a work type. So that control doesn't appear anywhere in here. So this is all contextual based upon what you're editing at the time. And controls are just things that we will expose loads of these. So yeah, we'll have full coverage of the 20, 30 odd that we've got with the current form builder, but we are going to expose loads of these because it's not just about the data capture, it's about things like layout as well. So we've got a container here, for example, like called a widget panel. So if I just drop that on there, this has got nothing to do with binding to the data. It's about controlling the layout of the view. So now we've got a typical widget panel that you can see, and I can adjust all the properties of that, whether or not I want it to be, allow it to be expanded and collapsed or not, whether or not it even shows that widget Chrome, maybe how many columns it has, whether it's got a title. And I can start laying things out exactly how I want them by using these things instead. So I can drop things wherever I want them. I'm just going to delete all of that for now, because I'm going to come back to that in a bit more detail in a second if I have time. How am I doing for time, Teresa? Do I need to speed up?
5 or 6 minutes, yeah.
All right, okay, I'll try and speed up a little bit. Okay, so my default view is just those 4 capture fields. Now, because this data panel is actually just a shortcut to dragging in a text box, and then that text box has bindings, and the bindings are what part of the data model that we've defined do I want to allow this control to edit. So this one that I've just dropped in manually, I've just dropped the text box across. I can now say bind the input to, and these are the types of fields from my data model that are compatible with that control type. So they're all strings, and text boxes can edit all strings. So I can say, we'll bind that to town as well, and then I'll give it a label of custom town. And I'm going to leave that in because we're hopefully going to see something in a second where, because they're all bound to the same underlying data model when this is surfaced in the UI, when I change things in this town, it will also update the field over here, and I can change them in either. I just want to show you really quickly a couple of utilities that's going on here. So I've dragged my data across, I've started laying out my fields, I can use containers and controls and all that kind of stuff, and I can bind data. When I'm looking at the view, I can look at the control tree. Now the control tree is showing me exactly what I've got going on this UI. So let me just make this a bit more complicated, and I'll put a widget in there, and I'll put these things in again. And you can see that the control tree is starting to build up to show me that, yes, I've got these text boxes, then I've got a widget, and inside the widget in zone column 1, I've got 3 text boxes, and of course these individual controls, I can name them. So everything has a control ID. So this county one, I'll go CTL county to give it a name, and I'll mark it as not visible to start off with. Now, I can then use that form control ID in code behind if I really, really want to. If I want to drop all the way back to code, there's a little code tab here that lets me write code as to what this form will do. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that, but that's going to be very, very flexible in terms of what you can actually achieve with your individual forms. And in there, I could basically address this control now as CTL county, and I can do things like .show to show it, .hide to hide it, and all of that kind of thing. So that's my control tree, and you can see CTL counties there within that zone. I'm just going to delete this. The other thing I want to show you is in terms of layout, all of these things like the street address here, it starts off by saying, well, where do you want the label, where do you want the control? And it takes the defaults for that from the view. So the view settings here have these control layout properties. Well, we're saying we're going to default the labels above, and if I change that, they now go to the other side. And then I can say the default control split is going to be like this. I can change the width of my form to accommodate. I can even do things like zooming in and out in here. I don't know why that's useful, but it may be. So I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can change the control split for where these things will happen. And then against the individual controls, I can say, but yeah, I don't want to use that. I want to specify it myself, and I'm going to put street address above. Or I can say, no, actually leave it to the left, but I'm going to change the way that that splits because I want that all the way over here for some reason. Just reset those back to the view. I'm going to default that to labels above. A couple of buttons at the top. This one just resets your view, just to basically undo the zoom and recenter everything. You'll also notice that how will this view be used as a form? That's the default for forms, but when I go into work type in a minute, you'll see this is going to change. I'll show you to as a blade, which is where you get additional zones for header and footer, and those are static zones that won't scroll up and down. The body zone is the part that scrolls, and you can put things like your ribbon component or navigation controls into those different zones. I'll just leave that as a form for now. Okay, what else do I need to show you? I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to save that. So I've defined an address. That now appears in my list. And if I create another one, I'll just create something else called a statement. And I'm just going to add a couple of fields to this, which is, I don't know, opening statement, which is going to be a string, and a closing statement, which is going to be a string. I'm just going to create a standard view for that, which has just got those two things on it. And I'm going to make these text boxes multi-line and hit save. Right, so I've got two entities that I've defined now. Hopefully you can see that that's a lot quicker than doing it the old form builder way. So now I want to use these forms. Now I can just pop these forms up against something and it would all work. But I actually want to bring those data types into one of my work types. So I'm going to go into my work type modeler, and I'm going to go into private client general, just because I've already got some data for this. And again, I now have a forms and data on the left hand side again. And now I've got form builder again. But you see, I'm not naming my entity anymore. It knows I'm defining the data structure for this work type instead. Now, whereas before you had aspects and all that kind of stuff that you now had to attach in, now everything's still done as data that's attached to other pieces of data. So this is a work type that is just a piece of data. So I can now start to add fields. So I can say against this work type, I'm going to capture a custom field called rating. I'm just going to make that a string for now, just because I've got limited controls at the moment. But then we've just created an address type and a statement type. I can come in here and I can say, well, where was the incident? And I can give that a type of, if I look in my type hierarchy now, I've got entities and I've got address and statement. I can say that's going to be an address. Now on my data on the left hand side, you can see that rating came in as just a field, which is that icon, but incident is a complex type, which is the green block, and it's got a little chevron next to it that says I can open it up, and now I can see, oh, well, that incident field now has these 3 fields. And I'm not limited to one, whereas Form Builder before, where you could only attach one instance of a form builder, of any given form builder into a work type, you can now put as many as you want. So I can say the incident was here, and the, oh my God, my brain's gone blank, accident was somewhere else. So like that as an address. And now I've got 2 fields that have got that complex type within it. And now, whereas before it was edit your aspects to define your blade for what this work type was going to be like, and that was a different experience to what you would do with Form Builder. Now it's all just views on top of data. So we, again, just go add a view. Now this is obviously going to be a blade. So this is the default view for this work type. What does it need to look like? And you'll see my toolbox on the left-hand side has now changed. I've now got some additional controls, such as a work item reference for a start off. Well, work item reference is something that's against the root model. It's against the actual work item itself. It's not part of the custom data that I'm defining. So it's got some custom controls for that that'll go through things like reference generation. I've got my work item ribbon bar, so I can drop that into the header zone. And that's now going to give me the standard ribbon for this work type when it renders at runtime. I've also got things in here like I should have blade header, and I can put that in the right place, put it up the top. And this is giving me my standard save controls, maximize, and I've got control about how all of those things will work. We've now implemented proper dirty tracking in this as well. So when this is at runtime, it will understand whether or not you've changed something. So one of the big issues with the current system is you open the blade and you do things like click view portal. It actually saves again because it's not sure whether you've changed anything. It saves and then goes to the portal, and that can make it feel a little bit clunky and slow because all you've done is you've opened the blade, you've navigated into the portal. It should be almost instant, but in reality, it's actually doing a save first, and it's doing all of its updates in the background, and then it'll take you away to the portal. It won't do that anymore. If you've not changed anything, it won't try and save it before it navigates. And you can enable and disable that behavior with this confirm if dirty and all that kind of stuff. Now, on here, I'm going to put in a widget, and I'm going to make this capture stuff. I need to speed up a little bit. And I'm just going to put my rating in there, and that's going to be a text box. So that's the rating field that I've defined against this work type. But watch this. What I could do is I could go, let's add a widget for the incident. And let's add a widget for the, I can't remember what I called it, accident. Now what I can do is I can just start dragging in the individual fields, like so from my incident I can drag in my street address and change its layout and all that kind of stuff, or I can just pick up the entire incident and drop that in instead. And you see that's now appeared with a blue bar saying it's nested, and that's because it's actually using the view that we defined against that type. So we created an address and we laid this form out like this, and you'll see that this nested control is bound to the incident field that's of that address type, and it gives me a list of the views that I can use. So now I can just use the default view, and that's going to pull in everything from that view. So all the stuff that we looked at before, well, we didn't really look at it that much, but we had things like code behind against that view that will control its behavior. All of that gets pulled across at this point. So I'm embedding that entire component that I've defined into this form as well. And I think view 2 I left empty, so I'll just see what happens if I do that. Yeah, it just looks bonkers. So I'll put that back to default view. And then I can do the same thing with accidents as well. So I'll drop that in there. And I'll hit save. Now, I can control the width of this blade. I can say, let's make it 690 pixels. And that's actually going to affect how wide this blade will be when it opens. So at the moment, the add edit Shuru blade, which is the standard blade for editing a work item, always opens at a specific width, and sometimes it can be too narrow. Well, now you've got full control of how wide you want that to be. You can have great big wide ones, but good luck opening that on a small screen. So I'm going to open that at 620 pixels, and it's going to look like that. So hopefully that's a true representation of what I'm going to see when I run this. Again, I've got code behind at this level as well. So if I really want to go and do some stuff when this form starts up, I can, in the ready method here, I can go and start referencing those controls and showing and hiding things and putting custom validation rules and all kinds of weird and wonderful things. But I'm not going to cover that because I've really run out of time. So I'm going to save that. That's saved against my work type. And then I'm just going to open a new window and go to one of my cases. Now, I have no button anywhere to open the new stuff yet, so I'm just going to drop into this console and fire this weird, wonderful looking command up, which is just opening the new Visual Forms runtime against this work item, telling it to use that default view. And I'll hit that, and all being well, I now have my standard header, my ribbon, rating that I added against this work type, street address as an incident, accident. Hopefully you can kind of see what's happening. This all works, by the way. I don't think it actually saves back to the work type yet, but the mechanics are all there in the fact that it understood that that was dirty. See, there's the icons have now grayed out. You can still save things if you want by enabling and disabling that dirty tracking that we saw on this component. But if I change something, you see that now lights up to indicate that it's dirty. And similarly, whereas these other buttons like I want to move this work item to closing or abandoned would automatically save when you clicked them before, if it's not dirty, it's not going to run that step. And that step is quite expensive. So hopefully it'll just speed everything up. Not only in terms of this rendering engine is infinitely faster, but also it's got efficiencies baked into it that get rid of some of the redundant stuff that we're doing in the current form builder. The only thing I want to point out that's left is everything that you see is completely customizable. So we've talked about just doing the no code stuff, but all of this toolbox here, the new way in which we're doing these things is everything is exposed via the developer IDE. So again, just like with the workflow engine, you can create custom actions, you can create custom controls. Those custom controls can say what type of data they bind to. So that can be the primitives. So you might have a custom control that works with strings that, I don't know, does something fancy. But I can also create a control that says, I want to ignore everything that Form Builder does in terms of giving me a text box and all that kind of stuff. And you can say, instead, I'm going to create a UI in JavaScript and HTML that knows how to bind to and manage an address, and just replace that entirely. All of these controls are registered as using a particular type, and you can say, hey, I'm bound to the incident location here. It's not in the UI at the moment. You'd be able to right click that and say, instead of using the nested control, use this other thing that is compatible that I've created in the IDE. And so it goes on. Right, I'm done because I've definitely run out of time. That was a really early build. Surprised it didn't go completely wrong, to be honest. So that's great. In terms of the last question, when do we get it? Probably about Q3 this year in terms of release to market. We're hoping to get something in preview in summer.
Thank you, Tony. I mean, there's an inordinate amount of work from some very, very talented people that have got it this far. I think it's a game changer. There's lots of stuff Tony didn't cover, hey. But there were a couple of questions. There were a couple of questions around what flexibility do I get to change the type of a field name? Display name is a given, right? So I basically, you suddenly realize that you created the address with the wrong string type. What can you do there?
That's a good question. At the moment, you would be able to change it with anything that's within the same root type. So if it's complex type of address and you want to change it to a statement, that doesn't make sense. You can, in fact, let me show you. You can go and change it, but what's going to happen is these things are going to start breaking. Am I still showing my screen? Yes, I am. Right. Okay, so on this one, for example, I've got this incident that's as an address, and I go, do you know what? That was just supposed to be a string. I knew it'd go wrong at some point. But yeah, you'd be able to change it like that, and you see it's lit up red now on the default view, and I'm hoping this works. Yeah, so the default view's now got an error. It says it's this nested component that's got an error. It's not telling me why at this point, but it will do. And it should be telling me that the binding that I've got against that component, in fact, can I select that component? It's that one, right? Yeah, so the bound field incident is of type string, but it must be an entity. So because I've gone across different types, it knows that that's no longer compatible with that control. So at that point, I can just remove it and go back into my data, I hope, and just drag in location and now have it as a string. In terms of any data you might have already saved, that will still be in the old structure. I need to think about how that's going to work.
Cool. There's one last question, conscious of time, which was from Igor, who was emojiing the hell out of you, and was basically a question around display rules for particular widgets, composite types, views, etc. Right?
Yeah, there's a couple of answers to that. So in terms of display rules and stuff, on here, it's not there yet. Against a control, you'll be able to add a display rule. So this will use the new rules engine, the transient stuff that's baked into that to be able to show and hide things. If you want to go more complicated, you can drop into code behind and just start showing and hiding things based upon conditions. So think about VB.NET type stuff where you've got your form, you're going to have events that happen and data that changes. You'll be able to monitor that data for change and then show and hide things through the code behind. In terms of composite UIs, because we've got the concept of default views, there's going to be some stuff in here, such as I might want to get rid of this ribbon and replace it with a wizard nav. And a wizard nav will be able to say, go to this view. When I click next on this one, go to that view. When I click next on this, go and load this entirely other different entity and go to a particular view on that. So you'll be able to govern different ways of composing UIs together without having to do bonkers stuff with display rules to show and hide things at different times. So you should be able to create entirely new UI paradigms. Wizard is the only one I can think of off the top of my head, which is where you want to guide a user through some data capture. You'll be able to do that by a combination of different views against your data, and then put in the mechanisms like a ribbon to say how I get between the different views. We might even put a little visual designer between that as well, where you can see the views and drag and drop buttons between them for that kind of stuff.
Thank you ever so much, Tony. We'll stop quizzing you now and let you go back to your deathbed. So going seamlessly over to Igor. Igor, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to ask that famous question. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, and you're showing the right share screen.
Okay, fantastic. So this is a little bit of a difficult one to follow after Form Builder 2. I think it's more than Form Builder 2. It's super exciting. I was freaking out during that session. There's things inside of there that just the possibilities that we can do are going to be just amazing. All right, so for those that don't know me, I'm Igor Jurusevich. I'm based here in Australia, and it's nice and dark in the evening for me, so almost 8 o'clock in the evening on Anzac Day. So it's my pleasure to present a little bit around business entities and business data design. So this is the subject that I've been talking to a few local clients here about, and I've noticed that quite a few people have been quite surprised. Oh, wow, they didn't realize that you could do that with Sharedo. So I'm going to just take you through this. I'm going to try to be as brief as I can. I know that it's been a long session today, and all the excitement of Form Builder, I don't want to anticlimax that. So let's go straight into it. And understand, what do we mean by, this sort of business entity design, and, what sort of benefits can it bring? All right. So what I want to do is I just want to get our minds in a certain way of thinking when we think about stuff. What we have is we have things, we have doing things, and we have being things. So if you just think about these two categories, doing things are things that we do, processes and tasks and procedures. From a business perspective, it's things like implementing a strategy, driving operational efficiency, meeting our business goals. We got to do things to be able to do that, right? And with inside of that, and if you think about the Sharedo, we'll just translate it back. these are things like our processes, our matters, our tasks. We do a matter against something, maybe against some real estate or against an organization or business, or we are driving that against maybe a patent a patent is a being thing. We do something against it, right? So if we think now about being things, we've got things that are assets, things that live beyond the doing of something. I can do something and finish doing something, but the thing that I did something against can live on, right? So if you think about things like resources and maybe compliance things in a business, or in the example that I'm going to do today is a little bit around asset management. We have those sort of tangible objects. I've got a couple of images inside there. Maybe we're talking about a building, and we might be talking about a submarine, or assets of an organization, like maybe even non-tangible assets like NFTs. They're a thing, they live out there, they have value, things can happen against them, right? We could have a sporting team, a team that we could do things against, right? We think about a building as well. These things can be much more complex as well. So if we think about, a building, well, a building could have floors, and in each of those floors, it could have spaces or offices. And in each of those offices, there could be things around an office, like a square meterage, what's its monthly income that office should bring in, those sort of stuff. All right. So hopefully that's just get your mind a little bit, we've got these doing things, and then we got these being things. All right. Okay. So, yep. And being things, as I mentioned, live really beyond a single process, right? So now if you look at these two worlds, if we think about being things, right? So I've just got a couple examples of just some things, maybe buildings, ships, and other things that we have, right? And when we talk about doing things, we can do things against those things, right? So if you take about, let's say, almost like a real estate case, buildings, or even a ship, we could have leases that we do against a building. We could renew a lease against a building, or maybe against a ship. Right. We could have legal notices that these are legal sort of things that could apply to any of those on any of those things that we're busy doing. Right. And then we could even have things that are not legal. Right. I know we're all legal, but if you start to think about using ShareDo within sort of your own organization, you could do things where you could have your own offices, as an example, and you could do inspections against those offices, or maybe repairs and maintenance. So it doesn't just have to be, from a legal perspective. There are these doing things that we can do against these assets. All right. Now, what that does is when we model and we start to model these being things, it gives us a way of reusing them. So instead of us kicking off a process or matter against a property that we type into that matter, so we fill in the property details and it runs off, and then we have a new lease, and we open up a new lease, and then we fill in the property detail. It could be the same property, but because we haven't related those things, they're almost separate. They're separate doing things, but there's nothing that actually connects them together. If we create that as a business entity, and then we do the lease and maybe the renewal against it, it means that we have now got a connection, and we're providing this proper full 360 view of not only just matters and tasks and people, but also against the being things, but against the actual assets that those operations are being done against. So typically in ShareDo, we can get this view of our doing things, and those different views that we have can just be, hey, I just want to know, how our real estate matter is doing. But then we've also got these views where we can go and say, well, we've got a certain contract with these clients and these statement of works, and that also provides us with a view of what are we doing for a client against a statement of work or contract. And you notice the word is, what are we doing for them, right, against those things. But with this model, when you introduce this as well, it brings us another way of looking at things, and that is from more of a business entity sense, or even like from a client portal view of things, where you can start to represent views either internally in your organization or to your clients from from their sort of world, from their business perspective of things. So they can start to think of, hey, you know, we have buildings and we've got floors and we've got things that we're doing against it, and I can come and look at these things and I can see what's happening against them, rather than just a list of legal or processes that you know, that my law firm is doing for me. All right. So what I'm going to do is just jump into a bit of a demo and just show you a little bit of what that can look like. I'm not going to go into too much detail and try to keep this so we can all you know, wrap up. But let's go and have a look. Where's my mouse? Somehow invisible. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay, so this is, you know, my standard typical Sharedo environment as we know it. And from within inside of here, I can go to my contract management. I can go and look at my statements of work. You know, I can go into a particular statement of work, you know, see details about this contract. I can see details about the period that this particular statement of work is covering, you know, what's its applicable date, what contract it is, you know, maybe there's some documents around that contract. And this is around, hey, this is this contract against the things that we do for a particular client, for example. And then from this view, I can go in here and I can go and have a look at what sort of work and cases are we doing that fall under this statement of work. Okay, that's your normal view of the world. Right, so now what we're going to do now is I'm going to go into another area. And this is also something I've noticed a lot of people don't know about, is I'm going to go to a completely different portal. It's not just a persona view, it's a totally different portal. And it's called my asset management. So as I go into that, you'll see even the URL's got the word asset management inside of here. And what I'm looking at now is let me zoom out a little bit and I'll zoom back in again, is a view that is more of a, let's say, a business representation. It's not about doing, it's about the assets and about the business, right? And I can see, hey, the scenario that I've got here is I have a number of different buildings and, you know, we have leases and we run those buildings. And here I'm presented with a bit of dashboard that shows me there's all my buildings and maybe some KPI or some information that's rolled up about everything that's going on across all of my asset portfolio. All right. And I'm looking at that. Right. I can then go in and I can say, well, I have this. Which one was I going to do now? That's Regent's Park office block. All right. So I'm going to drill down into this one. All right. I can go inside here and I can see, hey, here's some property. So now this is a building, right? This is not a process running. It's just this building. There's some information about it. You know, who's the management company of it? What's the details about it? It's got an address, you know, maybe some images and things like that. And I can drill down into this particular building. All right. So now I'm looking at this building. So this Regent's Park. Realtor Building Management is the client who, you know, it could be me as the client logging in and seeing this. I can see it's active and I can see some details that are going against that as well, right? And then from within inside of here, I can then go and look at this building and I can see everything that's going on inside of here. And I can see there's some comments, you know, someone's talked about some complaints. One of these buildings is loud music going on in one of the offices. People are complaining. All right. Well, let me go in now and have a look at the tenancies that are inside of there. So here now, within this building, so I've looked at all my buildings. I've gone to a single building and I'm now in that one building. And I can see all of the tenancies or premises or offices, or whatever you want to call them, that are inside there. And I can see we've got a few inside of here. I can see some are occupied, some are leases expiring soon, refurbishment, some are vacant, and different things that are going on. All right. So let me now drill into that even further. And this could go on and on, right? So I'm going to go say, well, let's look at that level 1 office 2 building. So I can, again, drill into that particular one. And inside of here now, I am viewing my asset. I can see certain details about it. I can see, you know, there's some complaints about loud music that have come through. And I can see the doing things that we are doing against that. So on this view over here, This particular shop, I can see that we've got a lease renewal request has come in, and there's been a maintenance request that have come in. So this one's like a legal operation. This one over here could be, something else. Or right, these are the two doing things. So I'm looking at my office, and I can see the things that are being done against that office and the processes that are currently run. And then from within inside of here, I could also then go and initiate things against them. All right. So instead of me, for example, opening up a form and then needing to fill in the details of the client, the details of the building, the address, and all that sort of stuff whenever I want to run something, because I'm now looking at this particular office, if I want to go and initiate maybe an inspection request, when I go and click on that, what you'll see, there's almost nothing that I really need to capture. I'm going to go and say this is an inspection request. I'm just going to say this is due to the complaint. So we've got a complaint. Someone mentioned it over there. I'm going to say other tenants complaining about. So I can never spell whenever I'm on the screen here. So I'm just typing up, we need to do an inspection run. This is the reason for it. Let's try to get that in, by that date. Maybe I type in inspector here. Maybe someone else does that a little bit later. I'm just going to go and, choose a particular team to do that. So let's just go and make that inquiries team that's going to deal with that. I'm going to go and save that. All right. Okay, so what you'll see is I've now filled that in, and you can see there was very minimum information I had to type because I'm in the context of that building. So this is referring to level 2 office, which is in the Regent's Park office block. All right, so I can see that sitting, well, this is level 2, and I can see that's in the Regent's Park office block, and there it is over there. So, we know who the management company is, we know what the address of the building is, we know what level the tenant is, how big it is. We've got all this information, and I can go and submit that off and kick off that process. So let's say I am one of your clients logging in, and you provided this sort of portal for me, and now I'm able to go and kick these things off. I can go and look at certain things, and I'm reducing the amount of kind of fatigue in information that I have to capture every single time, because that level 2 office 2 block is going to exist here even after I've run this inspection. Even after I run a lease or a renewal, I can always come back to it, and I can go in here and I can see what's going on. And just as you know, as Shady, you can start to add different things inside of here. So I've got these buttons over here that are here. If this was in a different state, the moment it's occupied, so I have these, I'll have different actions. So maybe if it's vacant or in refurbishment, there could be other little options and things that show up. And just as usual, I can start to tap into the normal things that of Sharedo, but now I can attach those to my assets. So here's my chronology, and over here I can see all the history of what's happened to this particular asset. So we could have, for example, this asset not exist until somebody runs a development process, and the output of the development process is the creating of this building, for example. And that building can now have processes run against it. And if I were to come to the chronology, I could actually see the full history of what we know about that particular building from its inception, from when it was first built, through to all of the legal processes that we've run, and the tenancies and the changing of tenancies and all those sort of stuff. And maybe we can even start picking up trends here, because we can see this particular building or this particular office seems to have much shorter tenancies. People, if I look at my history here, I can now go and say this particular office tenants are always pulling out midway through, right? There's obviously an issue with this particular one. And those sort of insights can come to light because we now have something that we can base a lot of different doing things against and start to see and view trends and, have a longer term history than just sort of one-off processes that run against it. All right, so I think I'm just on time. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a view on the doing things and being things. And I'll just show you a little bit behind the scenes here, just where that goes. So what we'll see is behind the scenes here, I have actually created a different area called custom business entities. Inside of there, I have a little section here called assets. These are just holding cells. And I have my building, which we looked at, and I have my tenancy, which we looked at, or office, or whatever you want to call it. So that exists in isolation and in separation to my matters, to my instructions, and to those sort of things that we can run against those buildings. So yep,
Right.
that's the end of that presentation. So thanks very much for the time. I'll hand back to Teresa, and obviously any questions or anything around that, just get in contact with us afterwards.
That's great. Thanks ever so much, Andre. Okay, see, I've done it now. I've lost my mouse.
Who's called me Andre?
Am I on mute? No, I'm not. Right. So yeah, so we're going to close out there. So thank you all ever so much for joining. I think it was another record-breaking attendance for us. So a couple of diary dates. Next month we are running the configurators course. I know we've been rolling out to ACT clients around the country over this last couple of weeks. So there is a configurators course running online next month. So feel free to head over to the events section and sign up for those. But thank you all ever so much for joining, and thank you to everybody that presented. That's great. Thank you. Enjoy the rest
Take
of
care,
your day.
everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes, bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.